Welcome to Tales from the Trenches Tuesdays. Today, it is my honor to have Jennifer Johnstone with us. So, a little bit about Jennifer. So Jennifer Johnstone is President and CEO of the Central City Foundation, an organization that's been working to improve the lives of people in need in Vancouver's inner city since 1907. Today, the Central City Foundation is a $50 million foundation that pursues this agenda through community-centered philanthropy rooted in a commitment to truth, justice, and reconciliation. CCF owns innovative, sustainable, social purpose real estate properties and builds relationships with leading community organizations to create the opportunities for investments in community-led solutions. Jennifer's background is in nonprofit management and community resource development. Over the past 30-plus years, she's held key leadership positions with organizations including Van City Community Foundation, Battered Women's Support Services, Vancouver's Status of Women, and Ballet British Columbia. An in-demand speaker and teacher of nonprofit management and innovation, philanthropy and fundraising ethics, social purpose real estate, and inner-city issues, Jennifer is also a leader in the community for her continued mentorship of women and youth. Jennifer has long served as a board member with several local organizations and is currently the chair of the Board of AFP Canada. So welcome, Jennifer. You know, I've officially and unofficially mentored dozens of fundraisers and coaxed folks actually into becoming fundraisers, people who I thought kind of had the right chops for it. And I found great resources through AFP, both informally and formally. But what would you say to someone who, you know, was calling you up and said, Jennifer, I'm thinking about leaving my job at ABC company, and I think I want to do something more mission-based, that aligns with my values. What would you say to people who are considering joining our very noble profession, if I do say so myself?
Yeah, I get those calls pretty regularly from folks, and the conversation always ends up being about values, being about what their passions are. I've had the privilege of, in the positions that I've been in, to know hundreds of nonprofits and charitable organizations. You know, that conversation usually is about sort of, well, you know, this is what I care about. Is there such an organization? And I guarantee you there is, and probably more than one, and at different levels. So let's explore that a little bit. And then really sort of, you know, the conversation is about, you know, that it is a tremendous opportunity to enact your values. And it is a very challenging profession. And often the conversation is about resources like AFP as a place to, you know, really get the support and the learning opportunities and the community of practice, you know, that is essential, I think. Fundraising can sometimes be a very isolating field. And then it's, you know, I explore their desire to build relationships, and what does that look like? Because, you know, I think if you are a person who is a relationship builder, that is perhaps one of the most important qualities that I look for. And despite our necessary pitching and all the rest of it, I still think that the number one skill for a fundraiser is listening.
Right. Someone once told me you have two ears and one mouth, right? So you should speak half as much as you listen.
Sure, and listening and learning to, and, you know, we're not taught necessarily to listen to each other, right? We often listen in order to think about what we're going to say next. We're listening. We're listening. You know, at Central City Foundation, what we do is build relationships. That's all we do. And we talk about a concept of radical listening. So we are listening not just to find our moment to speak. We are listening to understand, but we're also listening. We try to listen for opportunities and for those moments of transformation in a conversation. And I think that is similar for fundraisers. in the conversation with a donor where we are exploring what we do and what they care about.
Right.
And we listen for that moment when we can connect a donor's values and passions with the beneficiary impact of an organization that we're raising funds for.
Yeah, and Jennifer, I think it's so interesting that you phrased it in the order you phrased it, right? So it's the donor's passions first that align with the organizational objectives, as opposed to the other way around, where it's the organization's objectives, hoping that a donor will align with it. And so often it's about, kind of what the donor wants to accomplish and how do you help them accomplish that, or her.
It is, but I also think that we are, I think that in the early 2000s, we kind of reached the peak of donor-centric fundraising. And we're now we've now sort of tempered that with these concept of community-centric. So that it is I think there was a time, I think it's sort of been a bit of a journey, right? I would say certainly in the 80s and 90s, it was very much, those were the days when we sent out dear friend letters. Right? We invited you to an event. We got your name and address because we didn't have email. And we sent you, and we met you and then we send you a dear friend letter, right? And that was, and fundraising, well, there were some sort of, there were those folks who had been doing major gift fundraising and that all along. The majority, certainly in this country, we were still in that place of it's an outward communication, not a relationship. And then we had sort of that, we moved through, I think, a real commitment to relationship fundraising and then a real focus on donor-centric fundraising. But now as we are now in this sort of, at a time when we're trying to figure out how do we help people understand the changes that need to happen in this world, that's a conversation. That's more of a give and take. And it is about helping people understand community, not just from their own personal needs and perspective, but more broadly. So, and I've been along for that ride. I think most of that ride, I think about my earliest meetings with other fundraisers and kind of what the profession looked like in those days to today, and it's been quite a journey. And it's been a journey of constant change. And that's not going to stop. I don't think.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting. I've been in this world for almost 30 years. And statistics show that, 70-80% of folks that work in the nonprofit world are women. Yet less than half of them make it up to the CEO level, present company excluded, of course. But why do you think that women are overrepresented in the nonprofit world, but yet underrepresented when it comes to the C-suites?
Well, I think that patriarchy and misogyny have a lot to do with it. So we'll just put those big things aside. That has a lot to do with it. We live in a world where gender inequity is very real and has material consequences on the lives of people. It's also true that when we start to sort of meet at the intersections and understand that for women of color, those opportunities are even smaller, right? And even fewer, and the leadership. So I think it is the underlying systemic inequities of our world that maintain the power structures we have. And so why do certain individuals then find their way through that? And I think that is, I think that does have to do with, the lived and learned privileges that you have in life. I think it has to do, with different opportunities that are opened up from time to time, folks who are intentional in trying to shift that power. I think that women are overrepresented because the nonprofit world is the helping world, right? And the helping professions is where women have been allowed to be able to pursue their dreams and their careers traditionally. And that glass ceiling is very real. It continues to be real. Or for what we call for women of color the glass cliff.
Right.
So those things are real, and they continue in our society despite lots of efforts to make change. And those efforts and those changes will continue, I believe. I've also, I've been around long enough to see the waves of change and the forces that then arise to stop that change over and over again. But I do believe that there has been progress in some ways, and I do believe that, folks from all backgrounds have struggled for and continue to push for change. It's not those at the top making the change. The change almost always comes from, the grassroots, or it comes from the folks who are most affected by that structural inequality and inequity. And those are the folks that are making space for others to come with them and come along on that journey. So there's lots of change still ahead. And I've been working in fields where we've been trying to understand how to dismantle that matrix or intersection of power and power differential for a long time.
Right.
And we continue to work through that and to struggle to understand that and to find ways to dismantle that and build those places of inclusion and belonging where each of us can bring our full, beautiful humanity to this work.
Yeah. I take a look at, sometimes when organizations have a new board of directors coming, they place an ad in the paper and you get the typical head and shoulders shot. And I think they're doing probably much better on the gender equality side, and they're relatively balanced, I would say. But as far as the visible minorities go, holy moly, there's a long way to go.
Yeah, I mean, we're a long way from having inclusive, diverse boards and as well as organizations. Imagine Canada just released yet another report looking at how far we still have to go, and how much work. So, for me, that work is not new work, and it's not sort of it's the word I'm looking for. It's not temporal. It is the work that starts today. It doesn't have there isn't a finish line in my lifetime.
Yeah,
there's no finish line, and it's not something that's an add-on or that you can choose. For me, that you get to choose to do, right? If we are going to, in our case, we are trying to help people improve their lives in the inner city. We can't possibly do that without the best and most diverse minds and hearts, at the table at Central City. We're trying to build, because we have this unique community asset that is the Central City Foundation. We look to build a team that is both board and staff team that represent the full, what I call sort of the full journey of knowledge. So we have people who are the descendants of the first peoples of these lands, First Nations folks, on our board.
Right.
We have settlers of various generations and backgrounds and lived experiences, and we are recruiting newcomers to make sure that everyone who we have the most diverse thinking that comes to our board to help us, and to our staff to help us understand. I fundamentally believe that we don't accomplish these things. We won't accomplish any of these things alone. It requires all of us, and it requires people who don't think the same way.
Yeah. And, I think so many boards and organizations are afraid of that, because all your decision making is going to be that much more difficult when you have, I don't want to say dissensions, but when you have other opinions and other voices. When everyone is homogenous, it makes life really easy from a governance perspective.
Well, I think that
to deal with things.
You've keyed in. Sorry, I interrupted you. I'm working on.
No.
I'm trying not to interrupt people so much. I think you've keyed into the other piece of it, right? It isn't just about inviting people in. It's about changing the way you work. It's about changing the way in which you make decisions and how you have conversations. And so, in fact, as you do that, it isn't hard, actually. It doesn't necessarily. I mean, it takes the necessary amount of time for people, first and foremost, to know each other. I think that is the greatest challenge to addressing inclusion, is our baked in our society for sure assumption that when we see someone, we know someone, and our failure to bring our curiosity and compassion to each new relationship and new person that we meet. And so I think this is one of the challenges of the ways in which we have worked in our sector and even in this profession, focused on productivity without the balance of process, without the balance of, I argue daily that failure to really take the time to explore and understand more deeply what's happening in the community is how we got to the mess that we're in, right?
So, Jennifer, this was absolutely amazing. If folks wanted to get hold of you, how would they go about doing that?
I'm on LinkedIn, for sure. I'm on Facebook as well. And I am easily found at centralcityfoundation.ca.
That is amazing. Thank you so much for joining today, Jennifer.
Thank you for this opportunity. This has been a lovely conversation.
Hi, folks. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button right here.